Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the shimmering heat of ancient Egypt, where gods wear falcon heads, time rides in boats, and the sky itself is a goddess who eats the sun every single night. You stand just outside the massive gates of a temple in Thebes, squinting as the first rays of morning sunlight break over the desert horizon. The stone under your feet is still cool from the night, but not for long. The sky blushes from lavender to gold, and somewhere behind you, a chorus of priests is already deep into the morning liturgy, chanting in voices as dry and ancient as the bricks around them. You smell incense, warm milk, dust, and something faintly metallic. Maybe bronze, maybe blood. Who knows? It's Egypt. The sun, fat and orange like a salted yolk, peeks over the far dunes. Its arrival isn't just a time check, it's a sacred event. You're not just witnessing sunrise, you're watching the resurrection of a god. That's right. Ra, the solar deity himself, has just made it through the night, and he's back on his daily grind, dragging light across the sky in his golden boat. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I'm always curious who else is wandering ancient temples at midnight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're ushered through the temple gates, trailing behind a cluster of linen-robed initiates. Your sandals tap softly across stone worn smooth by centuries of feet. Above you looms the painted ceiling of the hypostyle hall, massive lotus-topped columns holding up a sky of deep blue spangled with golden stars. The blue isn't just decorative, it represents Nut, the goddess of the sky. She arches from one end of the temple to the other, her dark body dotted with constellations, her limbs long and graceful. Her fingers touch the eastern horizon, her toes the western. She's bent like a yogi with a galaxy problem. You pass under her belly, and for a moment, you feel impossibly small. This isn't just some myth, it's architecture, it's theology, it's breakfast. One priest catches you staring up and chuckles. "She'll eat the sun later," he says casually, like he's discussing weather or local politics. "But he's got a few hours to shine before she opens her mouth again." Right. Nut swallows Ra every evening. That's her job. Imagine swallowing the literal sun every night and still being chill enough to sparkle like a disco ball while doing it. Goals. You follow the priests out to the eastern terrace. From here, you can see the Nile glinting in the distance, flanked by palms and flooded fields. Crops sway lazily in the breeze. The light has grown stronger, bouncing off the water and bouncing right into your sleepy retinas. There's a ritual underway on the terrace. Young acolytes waving palm fronds, a scribe reading from a scroll, and an old woman who might be a priestess, or maybe just someone who wandered in and never left, spitting wine at a statue. The statue is of Nut again, though this one's smaller and carved in gleaming lapis lazuli. Her mouth is open. A boy walks up to the statue and places a little gold scarab at her feet. You watch, confused. Ra. The old woman explains without looking at you. That beetle's him, in miniature. The sun god, reborn every morning. He rolls across the sky like a dung beetle rolling his prize. Right, you've heard this part. Khepri, the dawn aspect of Ra, is often depicted as a beetle pushing the sun through the heavens like the world's hottest bowling ball. Egyptians didn't just respect the scarab, they were low-key obsessed. Scarabs on rings, scarabs on scrolls. Scarabs on your breakfast loaf if you weren't paying attention. Historians still argue whether the beetle was originally linked to Ra or if the symbolism came later, retrofitted like a cosmic sticker slapped on an old myth. What they do agree on is that Egyptians saw cycles in everything: birth, death, sunrise, sunset. And Nut, the goddess who eats and births the sun every day, embodied the entire loop. You step back inside the temple for a moment, your eyes adjusting to the dimmer light. A nearby wall painting shows Nut stretched across the sky, Ra in his golden boat entering her mouth at dusk. Apep, the chaos serpent, is coiled nearby, fangs out. Suddenly, something tugs at your tunic. A child, wide-eyed, silent. He points upward. You follow his gaze. High above, in a tiny crevice of the painted ceiling, a single beam of light strikes one particular star on Nut's belly. It glows faintly, like a wink. The child disappears just as silently. You blink. Maybe he was never there. Or maybe he was part of the story. Either way, the sun is now fully risen, Ra is blazing across the heavens, and Nut is patiently waiting to eat him again tonight. And you've only just begun. The temple fades behind you, swallowed by the rising light, as you make your way down a dust-packed path winding toward the river. Around you, the air thickens with the scent of sun-warmed clay and crushed papyrus. Somewhere in the reeds, an ibis flaps lazily into the sky, probably off to deliver some cosmic memo for Thoth. You pause at the riverbank, where a flat-bottomed boat rocks gently against the current. A boatman in a tattered russet kilt stands waiting, one brow cocked like he's been expecting you. No words, just a tilt of the chin that says, "Get in." You step aboard, nearly slipping on a patch of dried fish scales. Graceful. The boatman chuckles under his breath and pushes off with a long oar carved from sycamore. The Nile, broad and gleaming, stretches ahead like a ribbon of molten bronze. As you drift along, he finally speaks. "We're headed toward the tomb of Seti Vras," he says, like it's no big deal. "Got some old ceilings you might want to look at." You're not sure what's more surreal, his casual mention of a pharaoh's tomb, or the way the river reflects the sky so perfectly. It looks like you're rowing into the heavens. The tomb, when you arrive, is mostly empty, cool and still as a breath held too long. A guide meets you there, a young woman with eyes the color of soot and an attitude that says she's translated more glyphs than you've had hot meals. She leads you inside, down a slope so steep it feels like you're walking straight into the earth's memory. The walls are a riot of color, cobalt, vermilion, saffron, perfectly preserved thanks to the bone-dry air and the ancient artist's refusal to cut corners. "Here," the guide says, pointing to a long ceiling panel. "Nut again." You look up, and there she is, sky goddess in full glory, her star-speckled body stretching the entire length of the chamber. But this isn't just decorative. It's a visual cosmology lesson in 40 feet of stone. On one end, Ra enters Nut's open mouth, golden and determined. On the other end, he bursts forth from her womb, reborn and blazing. It's not subtle. "This is the book of the day and the book of the night," the guide explains. Two halves of one cosmic journey. Ra travels through Nut's body every single day and every single night. He dies and is reborn. Kind of like your motivation on Mondays. The Egyptians weren't squeamish about these things. Nut's whole deal was consuming her husband, brother, son every evening and giving birth to him the next dawn. That's devotion. Also, complicated family dynamics. Historians still debate how literal the Egyptians were with Nut's imagery. Did they actually believe she physically swallowed the sun? Or was it more symbolic, a kind of metaphor for death and resurrection? Either way, the art makes it look pretty literal. She's got that wide-mouthed ah expression nailed. What's striking here is how much agency Nut has. She's not just the sky, she is time, a living conduit which the sun, and by extension life, must pass. She's both beginning and end, cradle and coffin. As you stare up at her painted form, you start to notice details you missed at first. Tiny stars nestled in the crooks of her elbows, waves painted along her spine, a string of hieroglyphs crawling like ants up her leg. One shows a frog, another a knife. You're too polite to ask. The guide seems to sense your question. "It's transformation," she says. Ra must pass through trials in the duat, the underworld, before he's reborn. Some of those trials are symbolic, some less so. She doesn't elaborate, and honestly, you're fine with that. You move into the next chamber, where a relief shows Nut being lifted into the sky by Shu, the god of air. He's wedged between her and the earth god Geb, who lies below, looking sulky and extremely prone. The image is dynamic, Shu's arms straining upward, Nut arching above him like a human rainbow, Jeb pouting like someone just hit his beer. Once they were all tangled together, the guide says. Earth and sky and air in one eternal hug. But the world needed space. So Shu lifted Nut up, and that's how we got day and night. So basically, the birth of time came from the universe's first family squabble. Classic. A lesser-known detail? Nut was said to give birth not just to Ra, but also to the stars, thousands of them, flowing from her like glittering grains of sand. Some texts even claim she swallows the stars too, just like the sun, and then sends them twinkling out again come nightfall. Scholars still argue whether these celestial children were considered lesser gods, ancestors, or just pretty background noise for Ra's main event. Either way, Nut's got a lot going on. Back outside, the heat has shifted. The Nile's surface shimmers like beaten metal, and a lazy wind has picked up, rustling the date palms in dry whispers. You sit for a while on a fallen stone block, trying to imagine the sky as a living goddess, her skin stretched tight with galaxies, her belly full of dying light. It's a beautiful, slightly terrifying thought. But that's Egypt. Everything is majestic and vaguely horrifying. That's part of the charm. The guide hands you a small amulet before she leaves, a tiny blue figurine, Nut, arms raised, her body arched. For protection, she says, and perspective. You tuck it into your satchel, not entirely sure whether you believe in protective charms. Then again, you also didn't believe a sky goddess ate the sun until about 2 hours ago, so who's keeping track? Above you, Nut waits, patient and poised, ready to swallow the day the moment it begins to fade. You leave the tomb behind, but Nut stays with you, etched not just in memory, but in the shape of the sky itself. As the sun begins its slow descent, the colors around you start to shift, sand turning gold, river darkening to ink, the whole landscape softening like a dream on the edge of sleep. Back aboard the boat, the same boatman nods in recognition. He doesn't say a word, just pushes off from the bank like he knew exactly when you'd return. The Nile has stilled, the breeze cooled, a flock of geese flies overhead in a loud, lopsided V, probably debating leadership like a feathered parliament. The boat drifts steadily southward. The guide's amulet still weighs in your pocket, oddly warm. You thumb it absent-mindedly as your mind follows the curve of Nut's celestial spine. The boatman, after a long pause, says, "Want to see where the stories really start?" His voice is dry as limestone and twice as old. You nod. Obviously, you dock near a sun-baked cliff face peppered with holes like a block of cosmic Swiss cheese. These are the tombs of nobles, not pharaohs, but sometimes those guys were even more interesting. They had to work harder to impress the gods. Inside, torchlight flickers across painted walls, showing Nut again, this time not just swallowing the sun, but embracing it. Literally holding Ra in her arms like a sleepy toddler after a long, hot day of smiting evil. Some versions of the myth say Nut hides Ra inside her for protection, you're told by a new attendant, an older man with laugh lines and sand-dusted sandals, not just to transport him, but to shield him from Apophis. Ah, yes, Apophis, big, angry chaos snake, likes darkness, hates Ra. It's said that every night, Apophis waits in the underworld to ambush the sun god as he journeys through Nut's body. And every night, Ra has to fight his way past the serpent's coils to be reborn. It's like cosmic dodgeball, but with higher stakes. Historians still argue whether this battle was meant to be seen as literal cosmic warfare, or a metaphor for the struggles each soul faces in darkness. Either way, it adds a spicy layer to Nut's nightly routine. She's not just the highway, she's the armored convoy. In this particular tomb, one wall shows the dramatic showdown. Ra aboard his solar bark, armed with a spear, confronting a monstrous serpent whose scales shimmer like ink. Nut curves above the scene like a protective arch, stars twinkling along her belly. You count 7 tiny gods rowing the boat. One of them looks suspiciously like a baboon. "That's Thoth," the guide says, catching your gaze. "God of wisdom. Keeps score." Of course he does. Ra's nightly journey isn't just about light versus dark. It's about rebirth, renewal, the hope that even when you're swallowed by shadow, you'll come out the other side. Honestly, it's giving therapy. You step back outside, blinking against the full glare of the late afternoon sun. It feels closer now, more personal, like you're not just watching it fall, but understanding where it's going, into her, into Nut. The ancient Egyptians didn't fear this cycle. To them, the setting sun wasn't a sign of ending. It was proof that the system worked. That Nut was doing her job, Apophis hadn't won, and tomorrow was already on its way. You can't help but wonder, what kind of faith does it take to trust that the sun will return? That a goddess you've never seen will cradle it all night long and bear it again at dawn? Then again, what's your alternative? Start panicking every time dusk hits. As you wander back toward the boat, that you notice the stars beginning to appear, first just one, then another, like freckles on invisible skin. If you squint, you can almost trace the outline of Nut's body in their scattered glow. Her arched back, her outstretched fingers, her long hair trailing behind the horizon. One particularly bright star pulses near her navel. The guide earlier had called that Sirius, Sopdet, to the Egyptians. Herald of the Nile flood, a sign that life, like Ra, always returns. One fun little fringe theory? Some believe that Nut didn't just birth the sun once per day, but also carried every soul through the afterlife, that each of us, in death, gets swallowed by the goddess and reborn in the stars. Cosmic maternity leave, if you will. You lie back on the sand for a moment, watching the sky change. It feels like a ceiling now, not in a limiting way, but in that way where ceilings can be safe, soft, familiar, like being inside a great celestial house. Somewhere out there, Ra is already preparing for his duel with Apophis. Nut is stretching wide to welcome him, her skin inked with galaxies, her spine arched across the heavens. The boatman waits patiently by the shore, not rushing you. You could swear he's watching the sky too, lips moving like he's reciting something under his breath. A prayer, maybe? Or a dinner order? You decide not to interrupt. Before you leave, you gather a small stone from the river's edge, smooth, black, warm from the sun. You keep it in your hand, tight, as if holding on to the memory of the moment will anchor it. You return to the boat, and the river takes you once again, the current gentler now, like Nut herself is drawing you forward. And somewhere behind the sky, the battle begins. The night deepens, and the Nile gleams like poured obsidian under Nut's belly. You're drifting now, not just on water, but between stories, between stars. The breeze has cooled, and the boatman hums something old and wordless as his oar cuts silent ripples into the current. There's no lantern on the boat, just starlight and moonlight, both considered divine in ancient Egypt, both relatives of Nut. The moon, they believed, was another eye of Horus, or sometimes even Thoth himself, sailing the night like a celestial librarian, collecting every secret the day left behind. The boat slides toward a thick stand of reeds, and another figure waits, this one dressed in deep indigo, a linen cowl drawn up. She's young, but her eyes say otherwise. Without speaking, she hands you a papyrus scroll and gestures toward a torch-lit path that curls up a sandy slope. You follow. Of course you do. At the top is a shrine, not big, not ornate, but old. Older than some pyramids, they say. Inside, the walls are coated in soot and candle wax, and the ceiling is low enough to feel like you're crawling inside Nut's womb. The air smells of incense and something like fennel. Painted along one wall is a series of panels, like a comic strip from 3,000 years ago. You lean closer, squinting. This is the birth of the gods. Nut, stretched like a bridge between land and sky, is giving birth, not once, but 5 times. Out from her belly come 5 divine children, Osiris, Horus the Elder, Set, Isis, and Nephthys. Wait, wasn't there supposed to be only 360 days in the Egyptian year? Exactly. Here's where it gets weird and kind of delightful. According to one myth, Ra didn't want Nut to have children. Total helicopter dad energy. He curses her, saying she can't give birth on any day of the year. So Nut, being clever, goes to Thoth, the moon god. Remember? She asks for help. Thoth, because he's apparently also the god of loopholes, gambles with the moon and wins 5 extra days. Bonus round. Not technically part of the year, so the curse doesn't apply. Historians still argue whether this tale was created to explain the epigomenal days, the 5 additional days in the Egyptian calendar, or as a divine origin myth to give extra spice to the pantheon. Either way, it's a celestial hack job, and you kind of love it. Each of those 5 gods has their own drama, of course, especially Osiris, who will eventually get chopped into pieces by his jealous brother Set. Don't worry, Isis glues him back together. But tonight's not about them. It's about their mom. Nut wasn't just a sky. She was a mother of gods, a breaker of curses, a wielder of cosmic loopholes. And she did it all while upside down half the time, her feet touching the western hills and her hands the eastern horizon. You trace the birth scenes with your eyes again. In each panel, Nut seems more tired, but also more radiant. By the last birth, she's crowned with stars. You wonder if it hurt to give birth to chaos and order in equal measure. There's a tiny inscription beneath the final panel, just 3 hieroglyphs. Your guide whispers, it says she bore the world in silence. You step back, blinking, in silence. Somehow, that hits harder than all the battles and sunboats. Just the quiet truth of holding the universe inside you and letting it go. Outside the shrine, the stars have multiplied. It's hard not to feel like they're watching you, blinking slowly. You recognize Orion, just barely. The Egyptians called him Sa, linked to Osiris. a celestial reminder that everything dies and everything returns. The woman who gave you the scroll meets you outside again. She's holding a bowl now, something steaming and fragrant. Lentils, maybe, or some ancient Egyptian comfort food. She doesn't offer it, just stands there like she's waiting for you to ask something. You finally blurt, "What happened to Nut after all this?" She shrugs. That's the thing about gods. They're everywhere until they're not. Nut doesn't have a tragic ending or a final battle. She just keeps going, night after night, swallowing the sun, birthing it again, holding the stars, mothering gods, stretching herself across the impossible. And maybe that's the point. Some stories are epic, others are endurance. One fun fringe theory: some scholars think Nut was originally a cow goddess. Her arched body was the cow's back, and her legs the four pillars of the world. Makes sense in a surreal, celestial, bovine way. That would make the Milky Way her milk. You chuckle, imagining the ancient artist trying to draw that one with a straight face. As you walk back toward the boat, you realize your shoulders have dropped. Your breath has slowed. The scroll is still in your hand, and you wonder if you'll be able to read it later, or if it'll just be blank come daylight. The boat is waiting. This time, you sit at the front, toes brushing the river. Behind you, the shrine shrinks into a glowing dot, like a star you forgot to wish on, and above you, the night goddess Nut arches across the heavens, her belly full of suns, her hair full of stars. The oar dips silently again, and the boat resumes its glide, smooth, patient, dreamlike. You don't speak, neither does the boatman. The only sound is the slow lap of water and the distant rustle of reeds, like dry fingers brushing secrets into the night air. You're deeper now, not just on the river, but in the myth. The sky overhead isn't just sky anymore. It's Nut's body stretching over you, blue-black and freckled with stars, her form arching from horizon to horizon like a canopy of flesh and cosmos. She's full of stories, and so are the stars embedded in her. The ancient Egyptians saw constellations not as mythological curiosities, but as living companions, spirits sailing beside the sun god Ra in his nightly underworld voyage. And Nut was the one who held them all. But tonight, your path shifts again. The boat scrapes lightly against a marshy inlet. A flickering fire draws you to shore, just one, nestled among the roots of a cluster of sycamores. You recognize them as the trees of life from earlier dreams. The air smells of honey and resin. A small group of figures sits cross-legged by the fire. They don't notice you at first, or they pretend not to. One plays a slow, plaintive melody on a flute made from river reed. Another threads beads into a string of faded linen. They're dressed plainly, white tunics, bare feet, calloused hands. Finally, one of them nods toward a slab of stone, motioning for you to sit. This is where you learn about Nut's secret role, not as mother or vault of stars, but as the guardian of souls. You don't often hear this part in school textbooks, but Nut wasn't just celestial window dressing. In funerary texts, like the coffin texts in the Book of the Dead, she appears constantly, cradling the dead, promising them safety, offering rebirth. A sarcophagus from the 21st dynasty even shows her on the underside of the coffin lid, so that when the deceased looked up, they saw her, arms outstretched. They called her the coffin that hides the stars. Yeah, think about that for a second. The sky goddess as your eternal sleepover host. Cozy, if slightly unsettling. You stare into the fire. Sparks crackle upward, trying to join the stars. Someone passes you a cup of something warm and sweet. Fig wine? Date tea? You're not sure, but it tastes ancient, like a recipe passed down in whispers. The man playing the flute stops and gestures upward with his chin. She holds them all, he murmurs, the living and the dead. You follow his gaze. There's Orion again, Sa, walking across the night. Beside him, a barely there cluster of stars. That's Sopdet. The Greeks called her Sirius, but to the Egyptians, she was the goddess who heralded the Nile's flood. They believed that when Sirius rose in the pre-dawn sky, Nut was giving birth not only to the sun, but to the entire cycle of life. Crops, floods, fertility, the works. And it didn't happen once. It happened every single year. Historians still argue whether Nut and Sopdet were ever formally linked as mother and daughter, or if the connection was more poetic. But either way, the mythmakers knew what they were doing. Turn the stars into a calendar, and you've got a whole civilization on schedule. You glance at your cup, empty. The man with the flute has begun again, softer now. One woman across the fire leans forward. She wears a turquoise headscarf and gold earrings that catch the firelight. Nut feeds the sun each morning, she says, almost dreamily, but she feeds the dead too. She means it literally. In some tomb art, Nut is shown pouring out water and grain, sustenance for the journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. The dead weren't just dumped in darkness. They were cared for, nurtured, held by the same goddess who wrapped the sky around the world. Another strange detail? In the pyramid texts, the pharaoh is told to climb a ladder into the sky, to Nut's belly, where he'll be reborn as a star. Not metaphorically, literally. They believe the kings became stars, sewn into Nut's flesh like divine jewelry. You glance up again. Are they still up there? You imagine little celestial versions of ancient rulers bickering over brightness and placement. One of them probably insists on being the belt of Orion. Another sulks in the background, blinking twice as fast to get your attention. The woman with the earrings smiles knowingly. She doesn't let them fall, she says. Not the sun, not the souls, not even the forgotten ones. You wonder if Nut ever gets tired of holding the world, of swallowing and birthing the sun, of catching stars and ferrying souls. But maybe she doesn't think of it like a burden. Maybe she just sees it as love. A tiny breeze stirs the fire. The music fades. The others begin packing up, wrapping their things in woven cloth, folding mats, scooping embers into a clay jar. No one says goodbye. They don't need to. They know you'll carry it with you. As you walk back to the water, the ground feels firmer somehow, like the soil has decided to trust you. The moon is lower now. The boat is waiting, and so is the boatman. You step aboard. The river accepts you again. And above Nut arches in silent vigil, mother of the sun, of the dead, of stars. You exhale slowly. Somewhere inside you something has shifted. You don't know what yet, but you know she'll hold it. You lean back against the side of the boat, shoulders softening as the oar dips and pulls again, the ripples widening like quiet applause. The river is darker now, ink thick and endless, but the stars are brighter, crowding Nut's belly like silver seeds. The moon has slipped behind a veil of cloud, and for the first time you notice the silence. Not just quiet, real silence. The kind that hums behind your ears and makes your heartbeat sound like footsteps. The boatman hums, low and tuneless, the sound barely stirs the air. You're deep into the Duat now. The underworld, the other side, the place where the sun god Ra travels each night to be reborn by morning. Nut swallows the sun each evening, and that descent, that's what you're drifting through now. But don't worry, you're not dead. At least, not officially. You drift beneath a carved archway, barely visible in the mist, and suddenly the stars overhead blink out. You've entered a vast cavern. Everything feels close, even though the space is enormous. The walls pulse with golden shapes, not paint, not carvings. These are living images, writhing forms of serpents' eyes and creatures too old to name. This is the domain of Apophis, also spelled Apep depending on which museum label you're reading. The great serpent, chaos incarnate, the enemy of Ra. You freeze. Every instinct says don't move. He doesn't appear all at once. He coils into view, scale by scale, loop by loop, like a nightmare you remember backwards. No eyes, just burning pits. His mouth opens and closes without sound, and the boat stops moving. You're in his domain now. But before panic sets in, something flickers along the edge of your vision. Torches, swords. A whole squad of solar defenders steps from the dark, avatars of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order. They carry fans of feathers, mirrors of polished bronze, staffs topped with ankhs. You've seen their like in tomb paintings, but never this alive. They don't speak, they act. They form a ring around the serpent, who hisses in protest. And from the ceiling, a crack, a glow. Ra, the sun god, descends like a comet, wrapped in gold and fire, riding a bark of flame. He is old and young at once, hawk-headed, eyes like twin suns. In his hand, the Wust scepter, sign of power. He lands at the serpent's throat, and the fight begins. It's not a clash of swords, it's something deeper. Ra's light meets Apophis's darkness, and they writhe in spirals of heat and cold. The air itself trembles. This is the battle that happens every single night, the reason the sun doesn't simply vanish. Historians still argue whether this myth represents real solar eclipses or just the psychological fear of darkness in a desert society. But to the Egyptians, it wasn't just metaphor. This was survival, cosmic maintenance. Every sunrise meant that Ra had won again, that Nut had given birth, that order had held. And tonight, you're watching it happen. One of the defenders tosses a glowing chain toward Apophis. It binds him. Ra raises the wasp scepter. There's a burst of light so fierce you have to shut your eyes. When you open them again, the cavern is empty. No serpent, just mist and the fading scent of ozone. The boat rocks gently, as if nothing happened. But something has. The boatman nods once and begins rowing. The stars reappear as you exit the cavern, Nuts sky wide and calm again. You think about Apophis, how he never dies, how he returns every night. It's weirdly comforting. He doesn't get stronger, just persistent, like stress, or weird dreams about being late to school with no pants. Ra defeats him not by obliterating him forever, but by showing up over and over like clockwork. And Nut? She makes it possible, by holding everything in place. The night, the stars, the rules of the universe. She swallows Ra to protect him, and you. You lean over the edge of the boat. The water reflects your face, but there's something else beneath it. Something massive and slow. It takes a moment to realize it's the solar bark, the one you just saw. It's traveling beneath the river's surface now, heading east toward dawn, and you're floating above it, like a leaf riding the surface of time. Somewhere above, Nut arches herself backward again. You can almost feel the stretch in your own spine. She's getting ready to give birth. The next cycle is coming. But before then, there's one more place the boat will take you. You feel it in your bones. One more secret to learn. And then maybe, morning. The boatman hasn't spoken in hours, maybe days. Maybe he never did. You float forward, the water darker now, deeper somehow. Less like a river and more like the space between stars. Your fingers twitch. There's something tugging at the edge of your thoughts. Not fear exactly, but anticipation, like standing just outside a door that's slightly ajar. Ahead, the sky isn't just dark, it's velvet black. So black it feels heavy. This isn't Nut's star-speckled belly. This is the underside of existence, the primordial sea. And then you pass through it, not over, not around, through. A shimmering curtain parts and you're somewhere else entirely. No boat, no river, just endless sand. You blink. The air smells of crushed herbs and dry wind. There's chanting in the distance, low and rhythmic. The heat presses against your skin like warm cloth. You're in an ancient temple, not as a tourist, not watching behind a rope. You're inside the story now. Torches flicker in copper brackets. Walls are covered with carved hymns to Nut, her arms outstretched, stars pouring from her fingers like honey. A priestess passes barefoot in a linen dress dyed deep indigo. She carries a vessel shaped like a womb. She doesn't see you, or maybe she chooses not to. This is the temple of Nut at Heliopolis, the city of the sun. Once one of the holiest sites in Egypt, long gone now, swallowed by time and suburbia. But here in dream, it glows again. You walk through it like a ghost. The columns rise like trees. The ceiling is painted dark blue and dotted with gold leaf stars, Nut's eternal body spanning the entire room. A group of initiates kneels, arms raised in silent reverence. They're reciting the litanies of Nut, the sacred lines praising her dominion over both life and death. Her womb is the gateway to rebirth. Her mouth, the entrance to the duat. And her belly? That's where the sun curls each night like a child waiting. One acolyte tilts her head slightly as if she hears you breathing. But she doesn't look. You keep moving. A side chamber, small, quiet, frescoed with Nut's many forms, woman, cow, sky, tree. You pause before one image in particular. Nut is a sycamore, arms outstretched, pouring water and fruit into the hands of the dead. It's weirdly touching, generous. You wouldn't expect a sky goddess to be so maternal. But Nut is the ultimate mother figure. She protects the sun god. She births the stars. She holds up the cosmos so we don't get squashed by eternal nothingness. Busy woman. And get this. Mainstream historians agree she was originally a creator goddess. Before Ra took the spotlight, Nut was the one giving shape to the universe, like a divine midwife to reality itself. You smile. It's kind of nice to know even ancient theologies had powerful women running things. But here's the weird bit. Scholars still argue whether Nut actually gave birth to the sun each day, or whether that was just poetic metaphor. Some scrolls say yes, others say she just passed it along to a helper deity like Khepri, the beetle-headed god of morning. Teamwork, you know? You step into another corridor. The murals change. Now Nut is swallowing the sun. Wide mouth, round orb, gone in a single breath. One depiction shows her arching backward, limbs touching the ground at east and west. Her husband, Jeb, the earth god, lies beneath her, reaching up. They're separated by Shu, god of air, who stands between them like a referee holding two magnets apart. It's heartbreaking and beautiful. And maybe familiar? You remember the first time someone told you not now, and you felt the universe expand between you and them like a whole new continent. Nut and Jeb live with that space forever, but they still reach. Every day. Every night. You sit beneath the mural. The floor is cold. The temple hums faintly like a cat curled on stone. You exhale, and the scene begins to change again. The sand reforms into glass. The temple stretches like wax. Walls fall away, and once more you're in the sky, not beneath it, not inside it. You are the sky. Your arms stretch infinitely, fingertips brushing the eastern mountains. Your legs cradle the setting sun. Stars pulse along your skin like freckles. You are Nut. And below you, everything. Fields of barley, boats along the Nile, sleepy towns where children doze beside oil lamps. The world breathes beneath your arching back, and you hold it. Not by muscle, but by devotion. You can feel the sun inside you now, warm and bright and ready. Soon you'll birth it again. Not because you want glory, but because it's what's needed. Even gods have responsibilities. Even sky goddesses have stretch marks. You start to fade, just a little, not disappearing, just blending. Into the firmament, into story, into the shape of the next dream, and somewhere beneath your belly, the world turns slowly toward light. You wake, or something like it, on a stretch of moonlit sand, but the moon isn't above you. It's within you. Faint silver light pulses from your chest, echoing in rhythm with your breath. You raise your hand. It glows slightly like the inside of a seashell. Everything is hushed. The world feels paused, and yet something stirs. You're lying at the foot of a colossal statue. It's broken at the neck, its head lost to centuries, but the carved feet are unmistakable, slender, bare, with tiny stars etched into each toe. Nut, or at least what remains of her in this ruined desert temple. A breeze whispers through the columns. Sand skitters. Somewhere, a jackal barks once and falls silent. You stand slowly, brushing off your linen tunic. Yep, still dressed like a well-traveled initiate in some mystical ancient order. It's a vibe. There's a leather amulet tied at your waist. A small one, scarab-shaped. You smile. That little beetle keeps showing up, doesn't it? You look around. The temple here is old, like Old Kingdom old. Maybe once sacred to both Nut and her children. There's no roof anymore, just open sky. And that's where you spot it. A streak of fire tearing across the heavens. It's not lightning, it's not a bird, it's the sun, but not golden and calm like at dawn. It's fierce, frightened even. You blink and suddenly there it is, a giant glowing orb, not floating calmly across the heavens, but running, sprinting, hurtling westward like it's being chased. And oh boy, it is. Behind it, serpents. No, one serpent. Apophis, the eternal chaos monster. Coiled, shadowy, eyes like eclipses, jaws like tombs. He's been trying to eat the sun forever, and every night Nut swallows it to keep it safe. But now you're seeing it firsthand, the chase, the fear, the sheer cosmic drama. Your feet leave the ground without your permission. You're pulled upward, sucked into the great arc of Nut's body again. But this time, you're not floating peacefully through stars. You're inside her, running alongside Ra and his crew as they battle their way through the underworld on the solar bark. And it's chaos, literally. The boat rocks as Apis lunges from beneath the river of night, jaws snapping. Set, the chaos god turned reluctant protector, hurls a flaming spear from the bow. Ma'at clutches her feather, whispering spells of balance. Thoth scribbles frantic runes midair. And Ra, he just keeps rowing. You grip the edge of the bark, ducking as a plume of black smoke whips past. The boat feels alive. Not made of wood, but intention, ritual, faith. The same faith that built pyramids and whispered prayers into stone for millennia. The faith that Nut would always be there, waiting to swallow and cradle the sun, to guide it through the duat. And for the first time you realize, it's not automatic. It's not easy. Every night is a battle. And Nut fights it quietly, without fanfare, without temples or fireballs. She simply opens herself, wide enough to swallow flame, deep enough to carry light through darkness. You think of how often we assume mothers are invincible, that they'll always hold us, always know what to do. But even sky goddesses get tired. Even cosmic moms need backup. As the boat jolts upward, you break through the final gate of the night. The eastern horizon burns. The sun is reborn in fire and song. And Nut, she fades into mourning. Not gone, just resting. Until tonight, that's when you feel it again. The tug, not on your arm, but somewhere behind your ribs. It's not fear. It's not fatigue. It's memory. Because somewhere in all of this, between the scarab and the serpent, the stars and the stories, you remembered something. Not a fact, not a date, a feeling, the sensation of being part of something enormous, something older than language, something that doesn't care about GPA scores or social media algorithms or whether your laundry is folded right now. You are a speck, sure, but a speck with a place. One star in Nut's body. And that's enough. You land softly, back in the desert. The statue still watches, headless and quiet. The scarab at your waist pulses faintly. You press your palm to it. The sun rises again, gently this time, as if shy. A beetle trundles past, rolling its ball with grim determination. And you smile, because you get it now. This isn't about glory or grandeur. It's about doing the same sacred thing every day, whether or not anyone notices. Nut does it. So can you. The heat swells again, not scorching, not punishing, just present. A steady warmth that kisses your skin, reminding you that it's morning once more. But you don't rush. There's no need to. Nut has completed her task. Ra is reborn, and somewhere beneath this rising light, the world begins to wake, clueless about how close it came to unraveling in the night. You stretch not just physically, but in spirit. That strange inner light still glows, as if the journey inside Nut's starry form rewired you somehow. Then, without warning, you're no longer alone. Beside you sits an old woman. Her eyes are the color of forgotten gods, and her robes shimmer between indigo and violet. Her back is stooped from age or reverence. Who's to say? She hums softly, a tune that's probably older than language itself. You saw her, she says without turning her head. You nod. Because how could you not? She doesn't speak, the woman continues, but she remembers every prayer. You blink, unsure if she's talking about Nut or someone else. But in this realm, lines blur. Symbols collapse into metaphors and myths wear the faces of strangers. The woman reaches into a wicker basket. She pulls out something wrapped in linen, a tiny clay figure, painted with delicate lines. It's Nut, arching overhead, stars in her belly. She used to be everywhere, the woman says, brushing a thumb across the figure's surface. Painted on tomb ceilings, inked on scrolls, whispered in lullabies. You sense the ache in her voice, a quiet grief. Nut hasn't vanished, but she's been forgotten, pushed out by shinier gods, trendier afterlives. The great sky mother reduced to decorative motif. Historians still argue, she chuckles dryly, whether Nut was a primary goddess or just a cosmic backdrop. But ask any scribe who ever painted her curves, they knew the truth. You sit beside her. The sun continues rising, and the moment swells with something unspoken. Reverence, memory, maybe just the soft ache of nostalgia for something you never actually lived. Want to help me? She asks. You glance down. The basket is full of tiny figurines. Sun discs, beetles, gods, goddesses. Half-painted, chipped, beautiful. You nod again, because yes, you do want to help. The two of you sit quietly, brushing color onto the clay with thin reed brushes dipped in crushed lapis and ochre. The pigments stain your fingers, and you don't mind. This work matters, even if no one sees it, especially if no one sees it. It's delicate, slow work, the kind that teaches you to breathe, the kind that reminds you of stillness without demanding it. The old woman doesn't correct you when your lines wobble. She just hums. You find yourself humming too, and as you paint another curve of Nut's celestial body, arching from fingertip to toe, you realize something else. This isn't about belief. It's about attention. To see the sky and imagine it as a mother, to notice the rhythm of light and wonder who carries it, to feel small and sacred at the same time. That's where mythology begins, not in facts or figures, but in the stories we whisper to make sense of awe. You look over at your latest figurine. It's not perfect, but it's gentle, and that feels right. Suddenly, the ground beneath you shifts, not violently, just insistently. The old woman doesn't flinch. She just nods toward the horizon. It's time, she says. For what? For you to choose. You frown. Choose what? But she's already fading. The basket of figures, the desert air, the sun, it all starts to melt around you like wax under a flame. And just before the world goes full blur, you hear her whisper, "You can leave the temple, or you can become one." When your eyes open, you're standing at a crossroads, literally. To the left, the world you came from, bus stops, inboxes, awkward conversations, rent. To the right, the mythic path, not easier, not louder, but more aware. At your feet, a scarab beetle pauses, its tiny legs trembling under the weight of its dung ball. It looks up at you, patient, ready, and you realize maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe every breath of the life, every ordinary step is already part of that sacred rhythm. You don't have to abandon modern life to live mythically. You just have to remember. To let reverence color your edges. To look at the sky and say thank you, even when it's cloudy. You kneel and gently nudge the scarab forward. It rolls on, undaunted, and you rise, bathed in morning light, carrying the story with you. Not in your hands, but in your chest. Just like Nut, the sand beneath your feet shifts from warm to cool as the sun climbs higher. But you don't feel the heat quite the same way anymore. You walk as if you've remembered something ancient that your bones already knew, something deeper than the words you usually use to make sense of your day. Somewhere, a falcon cries out, not a warning, more like a greeting. And yes, you know exactly who it is. Horus, skyborn, watching with eyes that never close. It's not that you're important enough to hold his attention. It's that, in this moment, everything is. The ants, the wind, you. Ahead lies a vast reflective pool, fringed with papyrus reeds. Its surface mirrors the morning sky so perfectly, it's hard to tell where water ends and Nut begins. You kneel at the edge and cup your hands. The water is impossibly clear, cool, alive. As you drink, your reflection ripples, and for the briefest moment, it's not just your face you see, it's Nut's, overlaid like a veil, her eyes ancient and infinite. Then, a voice. Not spoken, not heard, but felt. Do you remember when I swallowed the stars? You blink, and suddenly you're not by the pool anymore. You're inside it, or maybe under it. The world becomes sapphire and dark velvet, studded with stars. You're floating, swimming through a sky that feels like water and breathes like a story. Tiny constellations spiral past your fingertips, and each one hums a name, Thoth, Bastet, Anubis, Isis, like a gentle roll call of the divine. A spiral staircase of light descends from above, and at the top waits a colossal pair of lips. Nuts. You know the moment. It's the myth's climax when Nut swallows the sun. Only this time, it's not Ra you see tumbling toward her. It's you. You're falling gently through her sky body, your shape glowing gold and soft at the edges, like a drop of honey in a midnight tea. Time slows, and you pass through her mouth. Inside, it's not dark, it's vast, luminous, comforting. This is not death, this is incubation. Inside Nut, the universe rests, sleeps, dreams. You drift past glimmering constellations still forming, galaxies not yet named, myths waiting for storytellers. You see strange creatures, serpents that wear crowns, crocodiles that walk upright, humans with ibis heads debating under stars. All of it swimming inside Nut, waiting for morning. You laugh. You actually laugh, because suddenly it's all so ridiculous and perfect. Of course, the ancient Egyptians thought the sun had to be eaten and reborn. Of course, the sky was a goddess and not just a backdrop. Because how else do you explain the way hope returns every day like a golden egg cracked into the sky? You hear the scholars now, muttering in the distance. Historians still argue whether Nut was a literal personification or a symbolic framework. But you've been in her stomach. You've seen the stars wait. The debate feels like ants discussing the architecture of the pyramid they're crawling on. You swim further into the mythic womb, deeper into the sky's secrets, and there at the center, you find her heart. Not a beating organ, but a space, warm, infinite, and humming with lullabies. You rest there. Time dissolves, and somewhere, Nut speaks again, not in words, but in gravity. You don't need to be remembered to be sacred. And that sentence lands so hard it shatters you. Quietly, beautifully, because you've worried about being important, about doing enough, being seen, making marks. But the sky goddess who carries everything, including forgotten gods and discarded myths, tells you otherwise. Being sacred has never been about being noticed. It's about holding, being held, being part of the rhythm. Even if no one knows your name, you weep, just a little. Not the ugly kind, The good kind. The kind you hope leaves a mineral trace behind in your soul like salt on sandstone. Then, as quickly as you arrived, you're pulled upward. You rocket gently toward the lips again, Nut's mouth now glowing with dawn light. And just like that, you're born. Not in a blaze of glory, not in trumpet fanfare, but in a quiet gasp, like a newborn's first breath. The desert air hits your face. The pool reappears. The reeds bend slightly as if bowing. You're back. You're changed. You're still you. And Nut, she's above you, as always. Arched, vast. Watching with 1,000 star eyes and not blinking once. You lie back on the sand, arms outstretched, mirroring her pose. And for a single luminous heartbeat, you become the sky. You exhale slowly, and the breath that leaves your body feels like it might carry traces of starlight. There's sand in your hair now, and some of it is definitely working its way down your tunic. But you don't care. You're lying beneath Nut, beneath her ever-curving silhouette of stars, and for once, you feel like you understand your place in all of this. Not at the center, not forgotten, just part of it. The sky lightens a little more, shading into delicate pinks and honey gold. You sit up. There's movement in the distance, a shimmer like heat mirage, but denser. Something with purpose. It's not Nut, not exactly. Yeah, remember him? The air god holding the sky above the earth like an invisible pillar, arms forever raised, back forever aching. And here he is, striding across the desert in those exaggerated Egyptian profile steps, robes fluttering like mist. His face is serene, but there's a kind of eternal strain in his posture, like someone who said, "Sure, I'll hold this for a minute," and 5,000 years later is still at it. You follow him. Because what else are you going to do? Each of Shu's footsteps leaves tiny whirlwinds in the sand. The air around him is clearer, more precise, as though he filters the chaos out of it. And as you draw closer, you realize he's talking. To himself? To you? Hard to say. "She asked me to hold her," he says, voice like silk and dust. And I did. Even when she expanded, even when she wept stars, even when she began to remember the names of all things. You walk beside him now, though he doesn't look at you. "I don't mind," he says, though you're not sure you believe him. "But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be held instead." Okay. Oof. That one hits. Shu smiles faintly, as if hearing your thought. "They call me air, you know. But I used to be breath, and even breath needs rest." He pauses, lifts one hand, and suddenly you're seeing it. The cosmic architecture. Shu holding Nut aloft, his limbs stretched wide, a single muscle twitch away from letting the universe collapse back into itself. And beneath them, the Earth God, brown and green, reclining with arms out, laughing, yes, laugh, as he tries to touch Nut with just the tips of his fingers. The two ex-lovers, forever separated by their own myth. It's beautiful. It's tragic. It's like watching an old couple who still flirt even though they haven't held hands in millennia. You reach up instinctively, mimicking Jeb's gesture, just trying to feel the air between your fingers. And for a second, you swear Nut dips just a little closer. "Just for you." A breeze picks up. Shu sighs. "You can't hold on forever," he murmurs. "But sometimes, holding is the only thing that matters." Somewhere off to the side, an ibis lands. Long legs, long beak, all attitude. And just like that, Thoth is here. God of wisdom, writing, and sarcasm. He's wearing a linen kilt and looks vaguely irritated, like a librarian who just found out someone's using crayon on a scroll. Thoth taps a reed pen against a blank tablet and eyes you. "So," he says, "you've seen the womb, you've touched the stars, you've been reborn." You nod, which seems to satisfy him. "Good, then let's write it down before you forget." He hands you the tablet. You glance down. It's empty, except for one glyph. The scarab. He raises an eyebrow. "Well," he prompts, "you gonna wait for another divine being to tell you how your story ends?" You hesitate. Then take the stylus. It feels natural, despite never having used one, like your hand remembers something your mind doesn't. You begin to write. Not words. Not exactly. Just symbols. Feelings. Fragments of the journey so far. The pool, the womb, the spiral of stars, Shu's hands, Geb's laughter, Nut's embrace. Thoth watches, nodding. "Not bad," he mutters. "Your grammar's awful, but the heart's there." He vanishes in a puff of papyrus-scented air. You're left standing in the desert, tablet in hand. A flicker at your side, the scarab again. Faithful, quiet, rolling its ball of sun stuff without fanfare. You crouch beside it. It pauses its work just long enough to look up at you. You think. It's hard to tell with beetles. Then it nudges the ball gently towards you. A little encouragement, right? Time to keep going. You start walking again, heading wherever the beetle leads. As you walk, you hear a whisper, maybe from the wind, maybe from Nut, maybe from your own starlit insides. Even gods need to be held. Even skies need support. Even suns need to rest before rising again. And you think, yeah, that tracks. You smile, tucking the tablet under your arm. The desert stretches out before you, golden and endless, and the day has just begun. The desert is no longer a dream. It's become a living scroll, unrolling beneath your feet, etched with footprints, myths, and the subtle tracks of a tireless beetle. You're not entirely sure where it's leading you anymore, but the rhythm of your steps feels intentional, like a heartbeat syncing with something older than memory. Ahead, the light shifts again, not the pale rose of dawn, nor the punishing glare of midday, but something more golden, more ceremonial. You squint. There's a massive gate rising from the sands, two colossal pylons flanking it like sun-baked sentries. Each one is covered in relief carvings, Nut arched above in delicate curves, Ra sailing in his solar bark, and a chaos serpent coiled beneath them all, waiting for a slip, a mistake, a moment of weakness. You hesitate just long enough for the scarab to roll past you and bump gently into your ankle. Okay. Message received. You pass through the gate. Inside, it's cooler, just barely, but it feels significant, like stepping into a temple that only exists at the edge of dreaming. Columns rise around you, painted with stars and gold-leaf lotus petals. The ceiling curves like a protective dome, studded with constellations. You recognize some. Others feel like inside jokes between gods. At the far end stands a low altar. On it, a bowl of shimmering ink. You've seen this before? In a vision, maybe? Or a fever dream at summer camp? Before you can piece it together, a woman steps into view. Tall, regal, dark as obsidian. Her eyes gleam with silver. She wears a feather in her hair and carries a scribe's palette strapped across one shoulder. It's Seshat, the goddess of record-keeping, memory, and divine architecture. She nods at you. Well, come on then, she says. We haven't got all eternity, just most of it. You step forward. Seshat gestures to the bowl. This is the ink of becoming, she explains, made from the dreams of Nut and the sweat of those who survived them. Okay, ew, but also, cool. She hands you a brush made of woven reeds. You've earned the right to name yourself, to record what this journey means. But be warned, whatever you write becomes part of the eternal record. No pressure. She winks, which is mildly terrifying. You stare into the ink. It ripples. Then slowly you dip the brush and write, not in hieroglyphs, but in emotion. In symbols only you understand. You write your confusion, your awe, the womb darkness, the spiral galaxy that lives behind Nut's belly button. You write Shu's yearning, Jeb's grounded joy, Ra's determined madness, the beetle's humble hope. You finish. Seshat looks down, smiles. Nice use of metaphor. Poets always do well in the afterlife. She waves her hand. The ink solidifies. Your words are preserved. Forever. And something in your chest shifts. A tension you didn't even know you were carrying melts. You've told your story, and the universe has listened. Outside, you hear a sound like waves, but slower, heavier. You and Seshat turn at the same time. Approaching now is a procession. Priests, gods, stars wearing robes. Even Shu shows up again, still looking tired. They're carrying something, held aloft on golden poles. It's a coffin. Oh no, you glance at Seshat. She raises an eyebrow. It's not your coffin, she says dryly. Honestly, you mortals are so dramatic. The procession draws nearer, and you realize what's inside the coffin isn't a body. It's the sun. Yep, there it is. Nestled in linen, glowing faintly like a coal just before it flares up. This is Nut's moment. You watch as the procession lays the coffin gently onto the altar. The bowl of ink vanishes. The room brightens slightly. The stars on the ceiling pulse. Nut appears. Not looming across the sky, but as a woman, tall, starlit, wrapped in a cloak that shifts with galaxies. She kneels beside the coffin, places one hand on it, whispers something only she and the sun can hear. Then slowly she opens her mouth wide and swallows the sun whole. No chewing, no sound, just a graceful gulp, and then it's gone, tucked into her celestial body like a seed waiting to grow. The stars on her skin flicker. A hush settles over everyone. It's the end of the day, and also the beginning. Seshat places a hand on your shoulder. She'll carry it until morning, she says softly. That's the deal. You nod, throat tight. She does this every night? Every single one, even on the nights you don't look up. The weight of that hits hard. Outside the temple, the sky darkens into true night. The beetle is there again, calmly waiting. You wonder if it's the same one, or just the same idea of a beetle, rolling duty forward no matter what. You step outside. The stars overhead are brighter now, more familiar. You recognize the Big Dipper, or at least its ancient Egyptian cousin. Orion's belt gleams, echoing the line of stars on Nut's torso, and the desert is silent, but not empty. You breathe deeply. The air smells like dust and immortality. There's nothing more to prove. You've seen the ink. You've met the sky. And you know that the swallowing of the sun isn't death. It's protection. A lullaby made of light. The beetle nudges your foot again, gently reminding you that the night is young. You smile and follow. Behind you, Nut stretches herself across the firmament again, her belly full of stars, her heart beating with sunlight not yet born. And ahead of you, the darkness feels less final, just a pause before the next beginning. The sands cool beneath your feet as you move forward, every step muffled by the hush of night. The sky above you is a deep velvet, embroidered with stars, and Nut arches protectively across it, her limbs touching the four corners of the world. She's quiet now, having swallowed the sun whole, but you can still feel the pulse of it beating somewhere inside her. You exhale slowly. The journey should be over, but something keeps pulling you forward, deeper. The scarab beetle waits just ahead, paused in that ever-steady position, front legs braced behind the cosmic ball it rolls with the tenacity of someone who doesn't know how to quit. It glances back. Well, beetles can't technically glance, but this one definitely seems to, and starts rolling again. You follow. This time, you're walking through a canyon of black rock, carved by wind and eons. The moonlight turns the stone into silver blades. It's eerie, but oddly comforting, like Nut's ribcage cradling the sleeping sun. The wind carries whispers. Not spooky ghost whispers, don't worry, no cursed mummies pop out here, but the soft chanting of temple priests, maybe centuries old, or maybe happening right now. Time's gotten fuzzy. The chant repeats one name again and again, Mot, and suddenly, there she is, standing in a shaft of pale moonlight, featherlight in every way. Not just her ostrich plume, balanced elegantly on her headdress, but her presence, her movement, her voice. Traveler, she says, and her tone is neither invitation nor command, it simply is. You've seen the ink, the sun, the goddess who eats the day. You nod, blinking slowly, and now you must learn balance. Ma'at steps aside to reveal something hovering in the air behind her, a massive golden scale. On one side, a gleaming heart, gently pulsing. On the other, her single white feather. This is it, the famous weighing of the heart. But I'm not dead, you protest. I haven't even paid off my student loans. Ma'at smiles, not unkindly. This is not death, this is pause. Judgment is not about endings, it's about clarity. You're not sure how your heart ended up on the scale, didn't even feel the incision, thanks, but there it is, sitting quietly, like a school kid waiting for grades to post. The feather floats, still and perfect. The scales tilt, and even though this is just a moment, it stretches out like the universe holding its breath. You think about everything that's led you here. The golden boat, the croc-toothed chaos serpent, the laughter of Ra, Shu's cracked knuckles, Jeb's ridiculous moss beard, the unbearable weight of silence when Nut swallowed the sun, and that beetle faithfully rolling light through time. The scales wobble. Settle. Balanced. Ma'at smiles again, the corners of her mouth twitching like someone who's seen too many outcomes to be surprised anymore. Balance is not perfection, she says. It's choosing to continue, even when the world tries to tip you. Your heart returns to your chest, still warm, still yours. And yeah, it feels lighter. A thought drifts into your head. Historians still argue whether the concept of Ma'at began as a deity or a cosmic principle. But standing here in front of her, you're not really interested in that argument. She exists, and her balance exists. That's enough. You bow slightly. She nods, and the wind lifts her feather high into the air. where it vanishes in a spiral of gold dust. The scarab beetle nudges your ankle. Of course. You continue. Now the desert feels different, quieter somehow, like the background hum has dropped a few decibels. You can hear your own breath more clearly. Even your footsteps seem slower, more rhythmic, like you're in sync with something you can't name. And then a ripple on the horizon. Not a mirage. Not quite. It's a temple, barely visible, carved from white limestone, glowing faintly under the stars. Not gaudy or oversized like Ra's solar towers, but simple, intimate. This is Nut's hidden sanctuary. It only appears at night. You approach with that hesitant reverence you use when opening a gift you think might explode. The door isn't locked, it simply knows whether to open. And tonight, for whatever reason, it does. Inside, the walls curve like a womb. The ceiling shows Nut's body curled protectively around stars, planets, and tiny scenes of human life. Lovers dancing, babies born, old women laughing by a fire. Each one a spark of light in the belly of time. In the center of the chamber, a glowing orb. The sun, yes, but not the one she swallowed. This one pulses with dreams. Nut steps forward again, now cloaked in deep blue embroidered with constellations. Her eyes are galaxies. When she speaks, her voice is wind, river, and lullaby all at once. You are part of this now, she whispers. You always were. You place your palm on the orb. Warmth spreads through you, not fiery or painful, but gentle, healing, like the sun filtered through leaves, like your best memory of feeling seen. The orb dissolves into your hand. Nut smiles. Behind her a star falls, just one, enough to remind you that even gods can weep. You close your eyes. You've touched light. You've known balance. You've walked with myths. And now, slowly, tenderly, you begin to dissolve into the sky with her. Not dying, becoming. You're drifting now. Not floating exactly, more like gliding, the way a sigh moves through a quiet room, or how mist slips across a river at dawn. The stars above you sparkle like someone's shaken a jar of gold dust, and Nut's silhouette arches gracefully over everything, a constant cosmic embrace. You can still feel the weight of your body, but it's softer now. Like you've stepped out of a heavy coat after a long day, light but not lost, present but not bound. Below you, the world slowly turns. You see the Nile glittering like a blue ribbon stitched into sand. Temples flicker with oil lamp glow. Farmers sleep beside bundles of grain. Cats, those smug little divinities, curl in the shadows, watching the night with half-lidded eyes. The sun, still inside Nut, glows faintly through her belly, a golden echo of all that heat and life, cradled in darkness. You're beginning to understand why she does this, why she swallows it, not to smother it, but to protect it, to carry it, to transform it. And you're still becoming. The scarab beetle is here too. Of course it is. That little bug is the real MVP of this whole cosmic circus. It rolls its radiant ball, now shimmering with flecks of memory, and pauses briefly, just long enough to give you a beetleish nod. It knows. You've seen it all now. The sun's wild joy, Shu's wheezing strength, Geb's stubborn growth, Ma'at's quiet justice. You've stared directly into the cosmic mechanisms of myth and emerged with a slightly scorched eyebrow and a whole new respect for the universe. You're back in the duat now. The underworld labyrinth that, let's be honest, would be an amazing escape room if it weren't for all the crocodile-headed judges and cursed doorways. But this time, it doesn't feel threatening. It feels familiar, like a long hallway in a house you forgot you once lived in. You recognize the passage where you met the snake, the chamber of hearts and feathers, the hidden door behind Maat's scales. It's not that you're walking backwards, it's that the path loops like a spiral, a sacred one. You enter a final chamber. The ceiling is painted with stars. The floor is polished obsidian, reflecting your face, tired, curious, maybe a little bit braver than before. In the center, a pool, still, black, glassy as a god's closed eye. You kneel, look in, and instead of your reflection, you see the world as it was at the beginning, formless, filled with potential. You see the primordial waters lapping endlessly at the edge of nothing. A single lotus floats there, about to open. You know what's coming next. From that blossom will rise the first breath, the first word, the first spark of light that begins the whole wild story again. You exhale, slowly, respectfully. Because here's the thing. Historians still argue whether ancient Egyptians actually believed these myths as literal truth or used them as poetic metaphors to understand nature's rhythms. But when you're sitting at the edge of a cosmic rebirth pool, watching a lotus bloom at the dawn of existence, metaphor feels like kind of a technicality. You don't need to know how the story started, only that it keeps starting, that the cycle is real. That nut every night swallows the sun, not to end it, but to hold it, to keep it safe until it's ready to rise again. And you're not just watching anymore, you're a part of this. The pool begins to ripple, not because of wind, because of you. Your presence, your weight, your breath causes the water to stir. The lotus opens, light spills out, and you rise, not with dramatic wings or a booming voice, but quietly, the way all sacred things rise, steady, unhurried, certain. You're not the sun, but maybe tonight you're its echo, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, something inside you is rolling forward. Not quickly, not perfectly, but inevitably. You step out of the duat. The beetle vanishes into the horizon, and you're standing once more beneath Nut's star-flecked body, her silhouette now glowing faintly with the promise of morning. There's no audience, no fireworks, no divine applause, just you, balanced, becoming, belonging. You place your hand gently on your chest, right over your heart, and feel it beating in time with something far older than clocks, something eternal. You're not sure how much time has passed or whether any of this would make sense scribbled in a museum notebook. But you know this: you are not alone, you are not lost, you are part of the sky. And somewhere, just ahead, the sun stirs inside the goddess's womb, ready to rise once more. You are floating again, not in the duat, not across the Nile, not even in your own bed. Though, let's be honest, that's probably where your physical body is draped like a sleepy cat right now. No, this time you're drifting through something softer, more spacious, like silk unfurling across an endless sky. Nut arches overhead, her stars blinking slowly, like tired eyes gently closing. Below you, time ripples. You don't see hours or clocks or sand slipping through fingers. You see moments, tiny, flickering scenes scattered like beads across a cosmic necklace. A farmer kissing the earth after harvest. A child giggling under a linen canopy. A priest lighting a flickering torch in a quiet temple. All of it sacred. All of it glowing. The world breathes, and you breathe with it. Nut stretches across the heavens again, and you remember how once she and Geb were locked together, sky and earth in a loving tangle, and how Shu, the god of air, had to wrench them apart so the world could breathe, so life could happen, so you could happen. You were born of that space, that impossible gap between sky and soil. Every inhale you take now is a reminder, even distance can be divine. And it's here, in this holy hush, that you notice the golden thread. It winds through everything. Through the laughter of ancient bakers kneading bread in reed ovens, through the groan of ship ropes against wooden masts on the Nile, through hieroglyphs inked by careful scribes in lamplight, through your own heartbeat. You follow it, gently, and it leads you to Nut, up close now, her face not terrifying or aloof but tender. Her skin is the color of lapis speckled with stars. Her smile is patient. Her eyes are infinite. She holds the sun in her hands, not fiery, not fierce, just new, small, like a yolk in the curve of her palms. And she leans close, just close enough for you to hear something not with your ears but with your bones. Rest is holy, she whispers. Even gods must sleep. You believe her, because if Nut, the sky herself, can pause every night to cradle the sun inside her body, if she can slow the whole world just for a moment of rest, then maybe you can too. You don't have to rise like Ra, blazing and dramatic. You don't have to march like Set, conquering every threat. You don't even have to flutter like Ma'at's feather, perfectly balanced all the time. You just have to be still, to allow night to carry you, to trust that morning will return, even if you're not the one dragging it across the sky. Historians still debate whether Nut was a late addition to the pantheon or always part of Egypt's earliest myth cycles, but let's be real, she feels older than story itself. She feels like the first blanket ever imagined by a weary child. And now you're nestled beneath her curve, held in that eternal embrace. A fringe fact for you: Ancient Egyptians sometimes painted Nut on the inside lids of coffins, so when the dead looked up, they would see her, ready to receive them. Imagine that. Even in death, the sky goddess waits to hold you. That's love. That's safety. You settle deeper into the dream now. The stars pulse like lullabies. The night bends around you like a cathedral made of breath and moonlight. You don't need a destination anymore. You've arrived. The beetle, yes, even now, just at the edge of sight, rolls its little ball forward, humming some secret hymn in its scarab heart. It doesn't need to be fast, just steady. You smile because you understand. Becoming isn't a race, it's a rhythm. And tonight, your rhythm is slow, peaceful, sacred. The final image? Nut rising once more in that graceful arc, stretching from horizon to horizon as the stars whisper their ancient names. You're wrapped in her curve, soft as a sigh, your thoughts drifting like feathers on a Nile breeze. You close your eyes, not to escape the world, but to join it, to blend with it, to sleep the way gods sleep, cradled by sky, kissed by stars, safe in the dark. And now, as the last light of this tale fades behind your eyelids, let your breath slow to the rhythm of ancient things. Inhale gently, hold. Exhale, like a river slipping into sea. Let the world shrink to the sound of your breath, to the whisper of dreams unfolding. You've wandered deep tonight, across deserts, beneath stars, through temples and underworlds, and the belly of the sky herself. You've seen suns swallowed and reborn. You've followed a beetle into myth and returned carrying a little more quiet inside. Feel your fingers soften. Feel your jaw unclench. There's nothing more to do. Not tonight. Not now. Somewhere above, Nut is arching herself into mourning. But here, right here, you're allowed to pause, to rest, to drift like lotus petals on black water. Whatever waits for you tomorrow will wait. For now, let your body sink, light as ash, into the warmth of sleep. Let your thoughts curl into themselves like papyrus scrolls tucked into the archives of your heart. The sun will rise again. You don't have to pull it. You just have to be here, still and soft, as the sky swallows night and holds it gently until it's ready to shine again. You are held. You are becoming. You are sacred. Sleep well, traveler. End of script. Sweet dreams.